Discrete Mathematics Viva, Chapter 1. Graph Theory. Graph can be defined as the pictorial representation or a diagram that represents data or values in an organized manner. A graph G equals to V, E consists of finite set where V is the finite vertices and E is the finite edges. There are different kinds of graph depending on whether edges have direction, whether multiple edges are connected to the same pair of vertices, whether the loops are allowed or not. Directed graph. The graph whose edges are directed is called or is known as directed graph. Example or figure for simple directed graph. Simple directed graph definition or directed graph in which each edge connect to two different vertices and no two edges connect the same pair of vertices is called simple graph. Here, no parallel edge and no loops are allowed. Multiple directed graph. If the directed graph multiple edges between the same set of vertices and loops are allowed is known as multiple directed graph. Multiple directed graph figure. Mixed graph or graph with both directed and undirected edges is called mixed graph. Figure for mixed graph. Finite and infinite graph. The set of vertices V of a graph may be infinite or it may be finite. A graph with a finite vertex set or infinite number of edges. The graph with infinite vertex set or infinite number of edges is called an infinite graph. A graph with finite vertex set and finite edges is known as finite graph. Pseudograph. The multiple graph with loops is known as pseudograph. Adjacency. The relationship between vertices is called adjacency. That is, the pair of vertices that are directly connected to an arc are known as adjacent node. Incidence. It is the relationship between edge and vertices. Let EI connect the vertices VI and VJ. Then the arc EI is said to be incident on both sides vertices VI and VJ. Since arc is incident on both of its end point, the vertices meaning of incidence is same for order and unordered pair. Degree of vertex. The total number of arc is incident on a particular vertex is called degree. Let V be the vertex, then its degree is denoted by degree V. Handshaking theorem. The sum of the degree of vertices of undirected graph is even. How many edges are there in a graph with 10 vertices, each of degree 6? Because the sum of degree of vertices is 6 into 10, that is 60, it follows that 2m is equals to 60 where m is number of edges. Therefore, m or number of edges is equals to 30. Theorem 2. The undirected graph has even number of vertices of odd degree. Terminology for graph. Directed edges reflect the fact that edges in the directed graph have directions. Theorem 3. Let GVE be the graph with directed edge. Then it is represented as shown below. Complete graph. Complete graph on n vertices denoted by Kn is a simple graph that contains exactly one edge between two pair of distinct vertices. A complete graph is a regular graph, but every regular graph is not a complete graph. A complete graph is a simple graph with max number of edges. Number of edges in Kn equals to n times n minus 1 divided by 2. Degree of each vertex is equal to n minus 1. Wheel graph. A wheel graph Wn of a vertices n is greater than or equals to 4 can be formed from the cycle graph Cn minus 1 by adding a new vertex hub which is adjacent to all vertices of Cn minus 1. Cycle graph or graph G with vertices n is greater than or equal to 3 and n is edges is called cycle graph Cn if all edges from cycle of length n. Bipartite graph or simple graph G is called bipartite graph if the vertex set V can be partitioned into two disjoint set V1 and V2 such that every edge in the graph connect a vertex V1 and vertex V2 so that no edge in the G connect either two vertices in V1 or V2 vertices. When this condition hold, we call the pair of V1 and V2 a bipartite of the vertex set V of G. Theorem 4. A simple graph is called bipartite if and only if it is possible to assign two different color to each of the graphs so that no adjacent vertices are assigned the same color. Graph union. Two or more than two graphs can be combined in various ways. The new graph that contain all the vertices and edges of these graphs is known as union of graph. The union of two simple graph G1 equals to V1 E1 and G2 equals to V2 E2 is a simple graph with vertex set V1 union V2 and edge set E1 union E2. The union of G1 and G2 is denoted by G1 union G2. Regular graph or graph is called regular if the degree of each vertex is equal. Or graph is called k regular if the degree of each vertex in the graph is k. A complete graph with n vertices is n minus 1 regular. Cycle Cn is always 2 regular. Complete bipartite graph or complete bipartite KMN graph is a special type of bipartite graph where every vertex of one set is connected to every vertex of another set. Subgraph or subgraph is a graph G equals to V, E is a graph where H equals to W, F where W is subset of V and F is subset of E. The a subgraph H is a proper subgraph of G if H is not equal to G.